Thank you very much. Can you see it? Can you see the screen? Can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, we can see you.
Yes,
We can see it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the moderator who has introduced me. And I would like to thank the committee and Professor Qiu Fang, who has also led the study, and Professor Masaki Oda, who has also presented the introduction about the study. And we also, I would also like to thank Ibu Suarsi here, who is also present here, I think, because she was the one who asked me to be the member of the research, and then I said yes, so I was delighted actually to be involved in the study. So my presentation is about English learning objectives linking with students' learning experiences in 9 Asian countries and regions. Actually, so the structure of the presentation, and my research is actually partly historical research on curriculum, because I analyzed the curriculum based on the work of one of the historical giant of curriculum field, that is Ralph Tyler. So the background is that curriculum has long been a major interest of those concerned with education, but curriculum as a conscious and deliberate professional field of study only within the 20th century. And as such, curriculum is a late arrival in the long drama of education history. And even, for example, the Ponder wrote a book which was entitled The Curriculum Field Without the Past. And then when I was a graduate student, there was no such thing as curriculum historians. This is what is said by Kleibart, who is also a historian in the field of curriculum. And then the historical and theoretical character of traditional curriculum studies disabled teachers from understanding the history of their present circumstances. And because many policymakers or curriculum makers do not refer to what happens before, so the curriculum is considered as a field which is without identity. But now the need for and the lack of intellectual curriculum history about significant curricularists who have made major contributions that have created the field has been insisted upon by many writers. And for example, Stone wrote a dissertation about Tyler, who has made contribution to the curriculum development. Piner also says the same thing, Bocher also, Piner et al., etc. So we can see it from them. And research investigating English curriculum in different Asian countries, especially a study looking at the elements of each curriculum in each country, is also still limited, and therefore this study aims to investigate the aims and the objectives of, and linking these objectives with learning experiences of English curriculum in 9 Asian countries, as mentioned by Professor Oda. So the study will be significant from 3 perspectives. The first one is from theoretical perspective, that the study can enrich the literature on curriculum studies in Asia, especially to do with the curriculum of English in Asian countries. And the second one from practical aspect, that the results of the study can provide practical methods on EFL curriculum analysis and also curriculum development. And from the policymakers, the results of the study can lead to a release of a policy on English curriculum development in Asian countries especially. And then the theory that underpins the study is the theory of curriculum development, especially, as I mentioned before, from Tyler's rationale of the curriculum. And the word curriculum here is the Latin infinitive of curriculum, meaning to run the course. Thus, career refers to an existential experience of institutional structures. And the method of career promises no quick fixes. So when we talk about curriculum, we cannot fix the curriculum quickly. On the contrary, this method asks us to slow down, to remember even the and re-enter the past, and to meditatively imagine the future. That is the word curriculum, career means from Latin words. So I chose Tyler and why Tyler and Tyler Rashana as the tool for analyze the curriculum. Why Tyler? Because Tyler is one of the three historical giants in the field of curriculum, and the other two is Franklin Bobbets and Joseph Schwab, according to Pinner. And Tyler's Rationa is considered as the most famous major model of curriculum development, and many educationists consider it to be the most influential and curriculum thought. However, as far as I am concerned, Tyler is not quite popular, I think, in the English as a foreign language context. So I used Tyler, and Tyler has also created a book which is called Basic Principles of Curriculum and Instruction, published in 1949, and it has been translated into 5 languages, and it has been printed 40 times up to now. So this book is a small book, only 100 pages, but it is really popular, and it is highly applicable in many contexts. And even today, as I will show you, that the data is actually relevant to what Tyler says. So it is said that if any single volume deserves to be called the Bible of curriculum making, it is certainly Ralph Tyler's Basic Principles of Curriculum and Instruction. A more influential text within the field would be hard to name. So Tyler's book is really popular. And then Basic Principles of Curriculum and Instruction attempts to explain the rationale for viewing, analyzing, and interpreting the curriculum and instructional program of an educational institution as a functioning instrument of education. So Basic Principles of Curriculum and Instruction gives guidance actually to the policymakers, to the curriculum makers, how to create a curriculum. So there are 4 basic aspects that Tyler suggests. The first one is to do with objectives. The second one is to do with design, with what education experiences can be provided, and then how can these education experiences be effectively organized, and then the evaluation. So my focus will be objectives and also the learning experiences and organization of the learning experiences. Some criticisms of Tyler's rationale are to do with the objectives, because some people who do not agree with Tyler says that the objectives makes the principles or the way Tyler's rationale is prescriptive, they say. However, Tyler did not respond to the criticisms because he saw that the critics did not give an alternative to the curriculum making as he suggested. So the study focused on curriculum goals or objectives and learning experiences, and the method is documentary research of 9 curricula of English from 9 countries, as mentioned before. So the concept of curriculum, as Tyler suggests, is education is a process of changing the behavior patterns of people. So this is using behavior in the broad sense to include thinking and feeling as well as offered action. So we can see later whether the objectives refer to this or are in line with this principle. And learning takes place through the change behavior of students. So it is what he does that he learns, not what the teacher does. Actually, Tyler in this case followed Dewey, who says this. So, so the principles of creating objectives, according to Tyler, is that a small number of consistent, highly important objectives need to be selected. So we do not need to formulate a lot of objectives. So we need to formulate selected objectives, but these objectives can be achieved. And then a small number rather than many should be aimed at, since it requires time to attain educational objectives. That is, time is required to change the behavior patterns of human being. So we do not need to, again, to formulate too many objectives. And educational objectives should be based on three sources of information: the learners themselves, studies of contemporary life outside the school, and suggestions about objectives from the subject specialist. So the curriculum later can be seen whether those curricula have been touched upon by the subject specialists. And then this is the process of the curriculum making, according to Tyler, but it is quoted by Carl in his book 2009. So there are three sources, and then the tentative general goals, and then these are filtered again: the views on learning, the views of education, and then particularized learning objectives, selection of learning objectives, organization of learning experiences, direction giving to learning experiences, and evaluation. So this is the process. And about the hierarchy of goals, so the goals can be hierarchically formulated. So from the philosophical aims, national aims, community aims, school aims, course aims, curriculum aims, unit objectives, and immediately instructional objectives. And I will show you later that the objectives of all the curriculum include the national objectives also. So learning experiences should give the students a practice of the behavior that is implied by the objective. And then the learning experiences must also be such that the student obtains satisfactions. And then the experiences should also be appropriate to the student's present attainments, and which is relevant to the objectives. And then there are many particular experiences that can be used to attain the same educational objectives. So the objectives, different activities should be attained to achieve the a certain objective. And then the same learning experience will usually bring about several outcomes. So one learning activity can also be used to bring about different learning outcomes. Um, and then what principles of learning experiences? Learning experiences helpful to develop linking skills. Learning experiences should be helpful in acquiring information. Learning experiences helpful in developing social attitudes. And learning experiences helpful in developing interests. So all these activities should be thought about whether or not or the activities can achieve a certain goal and can also bring about students' interest, good attitude, for example, on the learning of English. And the organization of learning experiences should follow three principles. That is about continuity. So the continuity of the learning experiences should be taken into account. And then the sequence should also be taken into account, and the integration should be taken into account. So what is meant by the continuity refers to the vertical reiteration of major curriculum elements over time, the same kinds of skills, and then sequence as a criterion, and integration refers to the horizontal relationship of curriculum experiences. So those aspects should be taken into consideration. So the results of the analysis of the curriculum. So I analyzed each of the curriculum, especially for secondary level. So when I analyzed the curriculum, so the documents, most of the documents are very thick because they include several aspects, not only about English, and starting from the aim of the nation, etc., etc. So I just looked at the the curriculum which are really to do with the objectives of English and the learning experiences of English. So these are the structure of organization of the curriculum. So they are structured differently so for different countries. So for example, Malaysia, national education philosophy, definitions, curriculum kebangsaan, and then aims, objectives, curriculum, framework, language use, and evaluation. And then Korea, characters, objectives, content structure, teaching and learning methods, and evaluation. Thailand also background, so learning standards, learning objectives, and learner development activities, and also assessment. And India also learning outcomes, uh, curricular expectations, learners activities, but India does not include assessment. But I'm not sure whether it is true or not, because I think this needs further investigation, because I think there should be assessment, but I didn't find it. And then Singapore, aim, core values, syllabus aims, areas of language learning, approach to teaching language, and processes of English language teaching, pedagogical emphasis, and assessment. And then Indonesia, the background, objective, scope, and etc. And assessment, China, nature, rational, subject core competencies and goals. And so evaluation, there is evaluation, and there is also learning activities and teaching and learning. And Japan also overall objectives and assessment and learning experiences. And Hong Kong, preamble, content, learning and teaching different language skills, promoting language across the curriculum, and also assessment. There is an assessment. Initially, I thought that Hong Kong did not include assessment, but then when I had looked at it again this morning, so it has. So I should have put assessment in Hong Kong curriculum. So from this analysis about the structure of the curriculum, we can see that elements of a curriculum is relevant to what is suggested by Tyler. That is that objectives, learning experiences, organization of learning experiences, and assessment are there in the curriculum. However, some of the curriculum expand the elements of the curriculum, and they also make some further illustrations or parts, some headings for each aspect. So this indicates that Tyler's rationale, although Tyler's, for example, is not often mentioned in the AFL curriculum context, it is still acceptable and it is still highly applicable today. So we can see that the curriculum was released in 2020 and 2020, 2019, 2017, 2018. In Indonesia, for example, it is 2020, 2021. And the structure of curriculum, which is different from country to country, indicates, also suggests that there is no one definitive way of developing a curriculum or of engaging in curriculum inquiry. So curriculum is a political text. As Piner says, that curriculum is not a neutral text. It is a political text, it is a gender text, it is a rational text, it is a racial text, it is a post-structuralist text. So Piner discusses the different definition of curriculum. And the curriculum development is a continuous process of constructing and modifying. Various parties contribute to this process, as mentioned also by Professor Oda, that who wrote the curriculum, yeah, which include government, publishers, parents, teachers, and learners. This list is endless, and some are more powerful than others. And to comprehend the process, we should not limit our study to the curriculum structure or curriculum contents, but should be aware of the roles of different contributors. So I also experienced when I was involved in the curriculum development that we had a very heated debate between people who have different opinions about curriculum, how the curriculum should be like, yeah. And then about the aim, so I was, to some extent, I was heartened that all the curricula mention or emphasize the students' ability on language use. So the students can use English. So the word language use is there in every curriculum. All mention the ability to use language. So this indicates that all the curriculum or the curricula have shifted from the traditional approach to language teaching or to the development of the language teaching the English language teaching to the functional approach. So they emphasize that the teaching of English should make the students able to use it, not to understand, for example, certain characteristics of grammar. Yeah, but however, later when we see the language experiences, we can see that the impact of the traditional approach is still there. Because some curriculum and most of the curriculum still emphasize the grammar, and the grammar is put as a different part of the curriculum. So all aims and objectives put an emphasis on language use and communication ability, which is relevant to actually a functional approach to English teaching. The objectives are global and a small number of aims. So the objectives are global. So to some extent, all the curricula have applied the principle of Tyler, that is only a small part, a small number of aims. And the sources actually can be seen that the sources have been based on the students' needs, because they also are relevant to the ability that the students have. And then the society's context also, because the curriculum also, the aims also involve, for example, communication in everyday life, cultural awareness, and empathetic communicator, discerning reader, etc. For example, in Singapore. So in other curricula also, for example, in China, cultural awareness, Korea also, and then Indonesia also, and then Malaysia, the subject specialists. So there is a touch from the subject specialists, and this can be seen from the objectives, which is focused on the functional approach. So, and also the functional approach to do with text type. So all these must be referred to, or must have referred to the subject specialist suggestion on the teaching of English today. And then, for example, from Hong Kong explicitly mentions that the teaching of writing follows a process approach to writing, and then the teaching of reading pre, while, post reading, which follows the suggestion from Catherine Wallace, which suggests that writing is a social process. So this indicates that the curriculum today has followed the development of the knowledge of the field study of the English language teaching. So this is about the learning experiences. So the learning experiences in Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, in all countries mentioned that the learning experiences are based on the language skills. So the learning experiences are described in terms of reading, listening, writing, and speaking, for example, and then different text types. So what I am also surprised is that the word text types appear in all curricula. So this also means that the curriculum makers are aware of the fact that there is a current or who developing or current approach to the teaching of English, that is a text-based approach, or the impact of systemic functional linguistics on the language teaching. However, as I imagine when the curriculum was created, that there were people who have different perspectives. For example, although there was some, for example, who has a background from systemic functional linguistics or text-based approach, there are also some people who have different backgrounds, and then they still put the aspects of traditional approach to language teaching. That is, they put the grammar, they put the cultural still vocabulary as a different part, grammar as a different part, and then cultural awareness as a different part. Meanwhile, if we use the text-based instruction, the vocabulary, the grammar, and the cultural awareness can be included when the students discuss the text types. And I think the strong influence of text-based approach can be seen from this curriculum in Indonesia and Singapore, and in China. So China is also strong. So they mention all the text types and the narrative, and China even gives an example of how to teach a narrative, for example, in the curriculum. And then, so this is China, Korea, listening to blah, 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 write about memos, one pass. So South Korea also mentions text types also. And then this is the contents of senior high school in China, for example, the vocabulary knowledge, grammar, pragmatic knowledge, discourse knowledge. And these are actually relevant to the text-based instruction. So the text will also involve all those skills. And this is the productive skills, for example, for competencies, they start and maintain conversation, etc., etc. And these learning experiences based on the analysis they have several characteristics that is to do with language skills, listening, speaking, reading, writing, and some also involve viewing, like Indonesia, Singapore involves viewing, and then all mention text types, and then grammar, vocabulary, cultural awareness, discourse knowledge, like in China, and learning experiences give students to practice, give students a chance to practice, the behavior. And I think this is also relevant to what is suggested by Tyler, that the learning experiences should give the students a practice of the behavior. And then in terms of different learning experiences to achieve an objective, to some extent this has been achieved in the curriculum, but because there are still many curricula which still emphasize the teaching of grammar, for example, as an independent learning experience. So it is to some extent that the learning experiences to achieve a certain objective, it can be done, but there are too many objectives that have to be achieved. So if the grammar, for example, itself have certain objectives, the cultural awareness also have certain objectives, and then the language ability have certain objectives. So all these have objectives, and then all these objectives have to be achieved, and then the teachers and the students will be very confused, and the time, I think, will not be enough or sufficient to achieve all those goals. And the same learning experiences to achieve different objectives. Again, if the curriculum for example, uses text as something that is learned by the students. So different objectives can be achieved. For example, in terms of grammar, it can be achieved, and then reading, language skills can also be achieved, because when we put an objective, for example, students can write a text, and then when someone can write a text, and then he or she must have knowledge about grammar, knowledge about structure of organization, knowledge about linguistic features of the text, knowledge about the topic that they are writing, knowledge about how to say something in English, so the knowledge about the cultural aspect. So that is, I think, one benefit of using text-based instruction. And this can also be seen from the curriculum of Singapore, for example. It is very simple, because the text types is mentioned, and then the learning experiences are also can be seen clearly, and all the language skills can also be about the text type. For example, this is from Indonesia. So in Indonesia, the learning experiences are organized into standard competence and the competence of standard of competence. For example, students understand the structure of organization and linguistic features of narrative text. So this is the first step of the learning process, and the focus is on reading and listening. And then and this should be continued with the number 4 standard of competence, that is, students can write a written or spoken narrative text using an appropriate structure of organization and linguistic features. So with these two objectives, which is continuation, with number 4 is a continuation of number 3. So the language skills are also included. The students' grammar can also be checked. and then the student's ability to write and spoke, whether it is spoken and to write the text can be also seen, whether in speaking it can also be seen. So with these two objectives, different aspects of English learning ability can be achieved or can be included. And of course, this cannot be done in one meeting. It can be done in even in 1 month, for example. And then the principles of learning experiences organization about the continuity can be seen, for example, from the leveling, from the level 1, 2, 3, etc. And then the sequencing can also be text type, for example, can be seen from the text types. So using the text types, we can also sequence the learning materials, the learning experiences, because the text types itself reflects the level of difficulty. For example, descriptive text is usually the most easy text, and then argumentative text is the most difficult ones. The review, for example, is also the most difficult one. So the text type itself helps us to sequence the materials. And then integration, for example, different learning experiences can achieve the same objectives, as I mentioned before, that can be done. And then this is an example, for example, in India. So the pedagogical processes, for example, 36 pedagogical processes 1 year. So uh, I think some of them are to do with certain aspect of grammar. So therefore it is a lot. But if we can make it into several objectives, I think, and then we include all the objectives in some objectives to do with small aspects of the learning experiences or the it can be, I think, can be done like that. Listen to announcement, for example, the learning outcomes and curricular expectations of English, and then 18 and conclusion. The objectives are in line with, in some aspects, are in line with the learning experiences and changing, that is to change the behavior, but not all. I think some of the learning objectives still need further discussion and also research. And the objectives of learning experiences have been influenced by the functional approach to language teaching, and the objectives are to some extent in line with the suggestion from Tyler and Walters in CAR, that is the objectives, the levels of objectives. And the impact of text-based instruction can be also seen from the text types mentioned in all the curricula, and also in some ways of learning, of organizing the learning experiences, like in Indonesia, in Singapore, in China. And then Tyler's rationale is highly acceptable and applicable in the EFL context today. So I think, in my opinion, if teachers, policymakers, educators also read, do further research based on Tyler's rationale, I think probably the curriculum will be better. And then all the curricula suggest different voices that have affected them, and this can be seen from the different structures and different aspects. And then the learning experiences in terms of continuity, sequence, and integration need to be further researched. And it is also recommended that teachers, educators, and policy makers be familiar with Tyler's rationale about the curriculum development. So these are the references, some of them only. So thank you very much.